lot of you know, Mee-Ow has extended its reach and its breadth across oceans. There are a lot of theaters that have been started by former Mee-Ow members, by these people over here right now. Dan, you famously created Whose Line Is It Anyway? And brought the Mee-Ow show to Edinburgh in '86. As a grad school director, how did you get to be director as a grad student? Because my impression of grad students was always that they were just dicks.
Well, yes.
Like I had no crossover. I maybe played basketball against grad students, and that was the worst because they were bigger and stronger.
I was a dick, and I wasn't bigger and stronger. It's down to Liz Kruger entirely that I'd auditioned for the 1984 show, and I'd come from London. I was on a scholarship. I had no idea what improv was, but somebody said, "Do you want to audition?" And I sort of kept getting through to the next stage and just loving this thing, thinking, what the hell is this form? It's just incredible. And it was, I have a huge thank you to Mark Brogger and Eric Gilliland, because they were running the audition, and they got me right through to the end. They got me through to the last, I think, 10, and they chose 8, or it might have been the last 12, and they. So I missed it. I was in the 2 that didn't get in. And it so knocked my confidence not getting in that I never performed again after that. That was the last time I performed. I thought, well, maybe I'll throw my hat into the ring and try and do it tonight. And then apparently you have to have been in the cast. So,
rules are rules.
Yeah, so.
In improv and in life.
But you do get 25 points for that answer.
He's good. So that's how it was. Liz asked me to direct it, and I said, yeah, that would be great. And I can absolutely remember, this is why this whole thing is so emotional. I can remember the day after the audition, just going home and not being able to sleep because I was going, oh my God, I've got a chance to work with these 10 incredibly talented people. What a gift. What an absolute gift from out of nowhere to have these wonderful people that you can do stuff with and make it up. And it's, I still maintain that improv, when it is good, is the most wonderful, funny thing that there is. And it's just an amazing American form, and one that I was lucky enough to sort of get the bug of while I was here at Northwestern.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see. It's great to see improv sort of translate to television, and we'll get more into that. But Pep Rosenfeld, you were in the Mee-Ow cast and then went on to start Boom Chicago in Amsterdam. And how does that come about? How do you think, let's take this and let's go across the ocean and start a theater?
So I was an econ and psych major, right? I wasn't theater, I wasn't film, I wasn't whatever else you guys have the clever names for it. But then I got into the Mee-Ow show senior year. I think I only didn't make the show junior year, but it's likely I also auditioned sophomore year. But that's not how I'm remembering it. But I made the show, it was great, and then I was like, fuck econ and psych, then I'll do improv. So it was like all the classic improv Olympic and Second City classes. And then my buddy Andrew and I were on a trip, where it was like it's kind of 2 days here, 2 days there, postgraduate trip through Europe. We were super stoned in Amsterdam and had the best stoner idea ever, which was, we should totally do a show here. Because hey, hear me out. They speak English and there's tourists, and we could totally make it work for the summer. And then so we did it. So for any impressionable children listening, please do drugs, but write down your ideas. And so we just did it, and it kind of worked. It was a summer project, and then just every year the summer got longer and longer until '98 we got our own space and went year round.
Yeah. Really incredible. I was a great beneficiary of that theater, and so many Mee-Ow alum have been. And yeah, really
we certainly gave Mee-Ow alum a second look at the audition. That's fair to say.
Yeah, I would like to think that for all of you that holds true. And Chris, you have a theater in Santa Monica, California, as well as you had some touring properties earlier out of school.
Yeah, when I graduated, I was class of '03. I was only in, fuck yeah, Dory.
Yeah.
Be friends with the producer on the panel. I graduated, and then there's a touring group that I'm now an owner of called Mission Improbable. It was started by a bunch of grads from UMass Amherst, and I was like, let's see what these state school dummies can do. And it was basically like Mee-Ow on wheels, and we did about 150 to 250 college shows a year, and then we kind of all gradually moved to Los Angeles. And there was a lot of despair in the earlier things for these kids, but the 2008 financial crisis hit, and there was a theater in Santa Monica called West Side Eclectic, which was a terrible place to see comedy. And he was like, oh my God, like I have a family, my stock market portfolio is down, and he basically sold it to us for the responsibility of continuing it. And so like there was a lot of despair around the state of the industry, but also like, when there is blood on the street, buy land. So like there are opportunities kind of waiting for you that you're not aware of. So we've had that for 15 years. We celebrated 15 years on the 1st, and it's been a fantastic time.
Excellent. Continuing down the line, Lily Frances, you have a theater now that's been running for 17 years, Laugh Out Loud?
It's in the suburbs. If you have something from that giant IKEA, which you know you all do, we're 5 minutes away from that. I live in the city. It's called Laugh Out Loud. And my big news that I'm revealing today is
hot goss.
Next weekend is the closing weekend of Laugh Out Loud. Oh. And I was invited to be on this panel, and there was part of me that I was like, I'm an imposter, but I ran a theater successfully for 17 years. Thank you.
Hell yeah.
And I know those of you, I mean, we've all done it. I'm fucking done. Like, it's my terms. It's like, there's no, you must pay the rent. I can't pay the rent. Like, it's just, I'm done. And so I had friends who said, you've got to go and say that. Like, that you can decide. And there was someone on the previous panel that said, like, there are endings, and I cannot wait for what's next. I have no idea what it is, but I've always flown by the seat of my pants.
Will that last show, will all the laughs be really cheap?
It's interesting that you say that. We
joke
are
than I
doing
thought
one
that
of the
was
last 5 shows is pay what you can. So yes, it's a 5 guilder night. So it's you can decide, like, that for me was the hard thing, like deciding when am I done. And literally everybody's like, we were looking for you. Yeah, because with 1 weekend left, our AC unit on the roof blew. like
Time
that's
to go.
And that's what you're dealing with all the time. And it was so much fun, and it was the best frigging job, and I am gonna miss it. And now I make tiny 1-inch high pottery. I doubt I can make a living at that, but I don't know, and I don't know.
Maybe you'll be the one.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Because let's say I'm the only one up here who has a vagina.
That's.
I think. We didn't check backstage,
Yeah.
but
And also maybe you have a theater that one of these children
Does
wants to
anyone
buy.
wanna buy it?
You could
Whatever
buy
your
a theater,
pocket
start
change
it
is.
up. Ed Herbstman,
Let's
our
get
returning
stoned and
champion. Started.
Check.
You've got a theater, the Magnet Theater in New York.
Yes.
That's how old now? And also,
Magnet is. Oh yeah. So I live in New York. I was in Mee-Ow 93, 4, 5. Not in 92.
Right. We're still friends, though.
I have to talk to you
He
about
fired
that
me, so I feel there's all kinds of. No, you didn't fire me.
I remember it differently.
Yeah, he did. You didn't return my phone call, and you cast the next cast, and then I found out I wasn't in it the next year.
So
That's not a firing.
So Magnet Theater is in New York, and so there's a Mee-Ow overlap and a Chicago overlap. I'm lucky enough to have been, I grew up in Schaumburg, which is a living nightmare. But
Except for me. Well,
Yes.
there's a hot spot there that's
growing
closing.
up there is pretty awful. Except it was close to Second City, and I was exposed to that, and came to Northwestern because of the Mee-Ow show. I had done I.O., and I was basically like, this is all I want to do for the rest of my life. was in an. Do you remember, Pep, the class we were in with Dell? And in that class, 5 theaters started from there. UCB, Boom, Magnet, Pitt, and probably another one I'm forgetting. I was thinking about that because I explained that to people like who don't kind of understand that improv hasn't always been an important thing in culture or even known about. You have to explain, no, it's not exactly whose line is it anyway, but it is kind of. But it's long form, so it's theater. And now people, they just get it, they understand it.
For us, we're not stand up. That's what it was.
Right.
For a long time, yeah.
Yes. But everybody was like, oh, Whose Line? It's like, well, Whose Line? I mean, I love Whose Line. Everybody loves
All right,
Whose Line.
where's this going?
Yes. It's
We sat them apart. We sat them on the ends.
it's
for a reason.
basically you're
Everyone
saw
saw
like
it coming.
starting
Getting
theaters.
feistier than I imagined it would.
I told you this would be a saucy panel.
The idea is that like we're all kind of the same religion but different churches. Is my thought. But there.
Which has never, ever been a problem.
Yes.
Not once.
Yeah.
We're good.
But I basically I did not want Mee-Ow to ever end or improv to ever end, and had to kind of start my own theater to make that happen. And as you were alluding to, owning a theater is a great way to kill a lot of parts of yourself very slowly. And I've tried to figure out, I spent the last 5, I don't own it anymore. I basically gave it to Armando and said, like, take my name off the lease and you can have it. It doesn't, we'll talk later, but it's basically, I've tried to identify what was really going on with me at that time, and I think I identified a couple of tensions within my life, and one of them is improvisation, doing good improvisation, living that spirit with other people, being around other improvisers. That's what I crave. And that requires a spirit of what Scott Duff mentioned before, like, there's truth. You have to deal with truth. Truth is the most powerful thing you have in front of you in the scene, inside yourself, with other people. But as a business owner, you have to manage information, AKA not always say the thing that is true between two people, or ever, really. I did my best to recruit Mee-Ow alums. Peter McNerney's here. Nick Canellis is a teacher at Magnet for decades. They're like, hey, we did Mee-Ow. I'm like, you're hired. Get over here. And they turned out to be the best employees ever. But also, it is a strain on yourself to manage the relationships with the people you care about the most while also being their employer. And it really is not pleasant. I am in awe that you've managed to do it at all, or anybody.
It's not always pleasant.
Yeah.
Apparently. No, it's not without lump taking. And I would even say directing is also a little bit of sometimes withholding the 100% truth from folks.
Yeah.
I also find that this is not working. Okay, let's trade these back. That when something happens, you talked about managing the truth between two people. It's also hearing everybody's side of the story, and they are vastly different. And figuring out, okay, the truth is somewhere in here, and I just have to, as your leader, make a decision and figure out how to navigate through these waters. You know, the person was wasted. I only served them one drink. They showed up drunk. Like you're like, I don't know what happened with that audience member, but
Right.
now we've got to figure out what it is and move forward.
Improv is it's a unique form. I feel like the first time you see improv, it's magic. There's so much of disbelieving that you've made this up on the spot. And I feel like, I don't know how popular improv was in the UK at all before you brought Whose Line there. But also I think one thing with theater is very difficult is to put it on television, which you've been able to do successfully twice with Mock the Week, which is a show of yours that ran for 19 seasons. And Whose Line, and how do you crack that nut of putting improv in a little box in people's homes and making it sort of feel give that live sense.
Well, Ed isn't wrong, really, that it's a very, very different animal on TV. It's almost so different that it really isn't quite the same. The first thing is it's got to be very quick. The entire show is 20 minutes, 50 seconds. On British television, 24 minutes. But in America, it's 20 minutes, 50 seconds. That means it's got to happen straight away. And you can't have people who are good but take time to get there, which is a lot of people we've auditioned in the past have been great, but they just don't do it fast enough. That's number one. Number two, it has to work. You will all know that maybe improvisers aren't the most, say, self-disciplined people, always get up on time, never do drugs, any of this sort of stuff. And if you have a show that doesn't work live, all right, the worst that happens is it was a show that didn't really work live. You can't go to people who've given you a lot of money to make a show and say, sorry guys, it didn't work tonight, I just don't have one. And at the beginning of the night when you literally have nothing, that's very unusual for TV execs. They're terribly scared. And you go, don't worry, it's going to happen. But you can't fail. You have to make it work. And the third thing, I think, is that you've got to assume that it's an audience. If you do an improv show, you've basically got your audience there. If it's particularly terrible, they'll walk out. But you've got them there. You have to assume on television it's an audience who just poke their head and go, do I like this? I'm going to give it about 10 seconds. Do I like it? Maybe I don't. Maybe I do. So you've got to assume it's the same audience every night who you've got to capture, and you've got to do it very fast. So it really is a different animal. Also, you can't, there's all the copyright things. You can't start singing Beatles tunes. You can't just decide you're going to go off into a tangent and do a well-known tune or a well-known thing. You've got all of that stuff. But it's why that over the years, and I know Catherine mentioned this to me yesterday, the people we have turned down for the show is extraordinary. I mean, some of it just because I was stupid, but we didn't take. There was one audition which I think Liz organised, and Catherine Newman was in it. But it was we had Mike Myers that we didn't take, Jon Stewart that we didn't take, Ben Stiller that we didn't take. And we took something actually was okay, but it was, and Catherine Newman, yeah. Catherine Newman, who vociferously we didn't take. And in Chicago, I didn't take Steve Carell and Tina Fey in the same audition. And for various reasons. I mean, most of those were you just put down to mistake. But at the time, it might be that they were Steve Carell was quite shouty when he did. I think he's a genius, but he was shouty, and shouty doesn't work on television because the microphone is there and it's got to be very controlled. And Tina Fey, because I thought, she looks like she's a writer. She doesn't seem to have the charisma of a performer in that thing. And then you go, oh my God, she's just an utter genius.
Yeah.
What an idiot I was. I don't know why I'm bringing all of this up. It doesn't
I know.
particularly make me look.
Well, let's take this off ramp.
Yeah.
And I think that is a good sort of reminder, though, to anyone that those are huge names, on the Mount Rushmore of comedy, and they were told no.
Oh, yeah.
It is not always a smooth path, and I know that's sort of been talked about, all day today. That it never is as smooth as you want it to be, and it is a circuitous route. But all of you built theaters and created opportunities for actors. There are more opportunities for improvisers in the world today because of all of you. Is there anything in your time at Mee-Ow that you feel like helped you to build a theater or to start a production company, or like what lessons did you learn here that then you took out?
Let me just quickly say that we took the format of Mee-Ow, and that was the format of Boom Chicago and remains the format of Boom Chicago. And like we've weaved, long form in and out, and we do separate long form shows now, and I'm a big long form lover. But our show is a mix of sketch and improv games, and I fucking love it. It's a great format. I will also say that my econ and psych upbringing did not give me any directing experience, but I directed the first show, and so I called up the director of my show, of the Mee-Ow 90 show, Jill Kargerman, and said, Jill, fantastic, and I said, Jill, I kind of have to direct this show. Could you teach me how to do that? And so I bought her a coffee, and she gave me the best quick lesson on directing improv, and it kind of worked out okay. So that's how.
We'll get to you, Chris. But just speaking on Pep, to back that up, I left Northwestern a week before my graduation because I got hired by Boom because you were leaving to go work at SNL. So I took over for you, and I flew on June 10th of 1998, and I did my first Boom show June 11th of 1998. But I was well seasoned as a Mee-Ow performer, and it was so easy to hit the ground running because of the format, and it was just it was seamless. Chris or anyone down there?
Oh, I just want to say that I think that a real value, like obviously there's a lot of collaborative stuff. I have these businesses with a group of friends. Similarly, Mee-Ow was a group of friends. And I think like there's a real value in, if you look at the Mee-Ow show as like the end product, and you look at, I don't know, a lease as the terms of your indentured servitude in some aspects of owning a small business, I think there's an element of you're allowed to tinker within that structure. When you're in charge of it, the way that you're in charge of the Mee-Ow cast, the way that we're in charge of this business. And I think that playful tinkering to solve problems is a much more dynamic and interesting way to solve those problems than to be like, fuck, rent is due. Like, how do we get rent? How do we get rent? Instead of being like, great, there's an issue that we need to address. What's the fun way we can collaborate to do it and figure it out? So I think tinkering is like one of the most valuable things that I learned at Mee-Ow.
I know this probably isn't going to come as a great surprise. I didn't have a great experience in Mee-Ow. It was tough. There were 3 women out of 8 cast members, and it was all of the people so lovely. And then when they got together, it was very cliquey, and I was the outsider, definitely. And I would come home from rehearsals and cry and be like, I'm going to scrape it together and go back again the next night. And it was so difficult that I too did not go back on stage for 2 years. That's why I assistant directed in my junior year and why I directed in my senior year. And part of how I run Laugh Out Loud is I don't want anyone to feel that way. And I had really mixed feelings about coming, and I texted someone and said, I had a tough time in Mee-Ow. And they texted back, I think a lot of people did. So I'm also saying that like it's so much rainbows and light, and it really was. It was like you were almost like a rock star on campus for the couple weeks through previews and McCormick. But you're not always going to mesh with your ensemble. Some of whom are here, so sorry guys. Individually, you're lovely. And
in a very special edition of Mee-Ow tonight.
So. But I really, and also getting fired, not a bad thing. Like at the time it feels terrible, but then you learn and you grow, and you know, you build yourself up as a human and go on to make decisions based on that as well. It wasn't all sweetness and light, but then I did my best in terms of assistant directing and directing.
Very good.
Can I answer that, or yeah? I think, thank you. That was great. Yeah, complicated feelings towards everything in life. Complicated feelings towards Northwestern, my college experience. Mee-Ow to me is like a more compressed kind of accelerant of those things. Like without that experience, I think I don't really remember much of college except for my Mee-Ow experience. And I keep relearning the lessons that Mee-Ow was trying to teach me back then. Hopefully I'm like getting a little better with all of it, but the application of tinkering and playfulness and going with the spirit of yes and is something that I'm an improv teacher, and I try to teach civilians this. It's like, be one of us, join us. And I find that I'm also, every time I teach a class, I'm relearning that same lesson. It's very difficult to live that way, but I find living the other way impossible. I've tried to quit this business. I tried to do other things radically different, but it keeps fucking pulling me back.
Didn't you become a cop?
Huh?
Were you a cop?
I did. I was that, yeah.
It must have been really
was so
fun being
surprising.
arrested by you.
Well, my nickname in the NYPD, I was a police officer for 4 years. I moved to New York. I quit the business. Fuck this. It's a great story.
Assault
My
and battery.
my nickname in my squad was College. So you don't get to pick your own nickname. They insult you with it. It's like, basically they were saying asshole as my nickname, but it was College because I talked to people. And the same exact thing when you're directing, when you're managing a business, when you're diffusing domestic violence assault, when you're dealing with other police officers, when you're in a shitty job, or when you're dealing with like a lot going on within you about your life, it's the same lessons that, for me, directing Mee-Ow was, when I think of Mee-Ow, I think of directing. Being in it was great, that was fun, but compared to directing, being in it is like not anything. It's like drinking water. It was like, because directing is like suddenly everyone's looking to you, and it's like, oh fuck, I can't have the kind of fun I was having. A lot like teaching. A lot like being a policeman, yes.
Yeah.
I can't, wait a second. I can't also break the laws I was breaking?
There are rules. Break them.
Yeah. You actually get to break different rules. It's very fun. If you enjoy it, I didn't. But the lesson you were asking, like, what did you take? And I took probably the confidence, like Eric was saying, the confidence that I could do it, like that we pulled it off. The entire time before pulling off the show, it is impossible. It's not gonna happen. It's gonna be a mess. And then it happens, and all that impossibility washes away, and it feels like the same thing with running a business. I will also say having kids is very similar. Becoming a parent, you have to also manage information and not necessarily be completely honest about everything. In a way that I think like is, I continue to learn those lessons, is what I guess is the thesis of my I had ChatGPT write this whole thing.
It was
so
great.
Some of it's
Couldn't tell,
hallucinations.
couldn't tell.
Yeah, thank you.
This is a question for Dan. Dan, could you speak a little bit about your experience as director of Mee-Ow and how you decided to take the show to Edinburgh Festival and how that went?
Well, I'd been by the way, can I just quash the I say myth, it's like nobody gives a shit, but there is this thing that I sort of deliberately did the Edinburgh show so I could audition the show for the BBC, which I was trying to get into. But that's not true, because we made the decision to go to Edinburgh right at the beginning, that I'd grown up going to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And if you haven't been, it is a fantastic thing to go to. It's just a great experience. There's hundreds and hundreds of shows, and you can go and see everything. And it's a great experience in terms of getting shows on a shoestring and really, you know, doing all that sort of stuff, seeing stuff. And I thought, nobody in England, you asked the question, was there any improv? I mean, the Comedy Store players had just about started, again, from America, but nobody was doing improv. Nobody had seen improv. And I thought this would be such a great thing to do. It's such a talented group. I thought it would be great. So we started from the beginning. I mean, I think it was meeting number one, saying, right, in this day in July or August, we're going to Edinburgh, so we have to raise money. And we had to raise an enormous amount of money. So it meant we went and did Mee-Ow teaching. Andy Hirsch was talking about this at schools. We went to synagogues and did improv stuff there. We did a 24-hour Mee-Ow-a-thon. We got money, I think, from the dean of the department. I think it was a loan, so I think we still owe it to him. But it was...
That's why these lights are so bad.
So, yeah. And it was just one of the things. And then getting the group there, I mean, they were all fantastic, and it was wonderful. The only thing I would say, and this is what I said about sort of discipline in an improv group, is I just, as it started, got into the BBC, and I knew the person who was running the Perrier panel, which was the award, like the Tony Awards for Edinburgh. And if you won that, you got to run in the West End. And I thought, look, where's something that's so different? Maybe that would be great. And on the day that I got everybody there, they decided to party the night before. And everybody, it was just like the worst show of all time. And then people came out, and actually, I have to say, it was the closest I got to being fired from the BBC initially, because they just couldn't believe this thing was so bad. But I do have two other things to say. One is air conditioning. This is the most important thing I can give you about comedy, is we did a Mee-Ow show in here, and it was in February, and it was boiling. It was absolutely boiling, and the air conditioning had broken, and the show was too long. And it died. This was the first night. It just died. And from then on, I'm known as being absolutely obsessive about keeping it cool because audiences
It's
go.
important.
And the second question I have is the 1985 show, which was calling Eating Mee-Ow, right? Calling Eating Mee-Ow.
If you say so.
Well, it was. What I want to know, 87, you're right, 87. I want to know, if that was the title they chose, what were the ones they disregarded? What were the ones they couldn't get through if that was the one they used?
Hi there, my name is Shai. I'm a current member of Mee-Ow. My question is, particularly with experiences like at the Fringe or Boom Chicago, are there aspects to your humor or improv style that you thought were universal but turned out to be uniquely American? And if so, like, are there, other cultures of comedy that you have learned from?
Me first? I honestly was surprised how little, I'm surprised how little, great question, by the way, but I'm always surprised how frequently I'm asked that and how little a difference I see. It's really about reference base more than anything else. I'd say it's 85% reference base. So, I mean, I will oversimplify by saying somebody getting hit on the head is always funny, but good people can disagree on that. And part two is that Dutch
Particularly
people
if
are
it leads
mean.
to death.
I mean, it depends who's getting hit. Dutch people like their humor mean, and I think that there's like scales of stuff, and you got to learn that scales. But it's never like, oh, I have to reinvent everything. It's just don't talk about Gilligan's Island.
Thank you, guys.